The alien ship broke through Earth's thin clouds like a knife through paper. It was silent, smooth, and huge, so huge that it made mountains look small. For 3 days, people across the world watched it move across the sky, blocking the sun in some places, turning daylight into dusk. No one knew what they wanted. No one knew why they had come. When the first message came, it was broadcast in every language, every device, every frequency. The aliens called themselves the Xylar Dominion. Their voice was calm, deep, and cold. They said they had been watching humanity for centuries and had decided Earth was too weak to survive alone. They would bring order. That word, order, echoed across every human city. At first, humanity tried to fight. Fighter jets rose, missiles were launched, but nothing reached the alien ship. Everything turned to dust before impact. Then, the sky burned red. In a few hours, major cities lost all power. No internet. No satellites. Just silence and fear. In a frozen military base in northern Canada, a small group of soldiers and scientists huddled inside an old bunker. The base was called Outpost 19, forgotten by most of the world. But now, it was the only place still communicating through shortwave radio. Among them was Captain James Walker, a man known for his calm voice even in the face of chaos. James looked at the radar screen, still alive thanks to old analog systems. "They're moving toward the northern hemisphere," he said quietly. "Maybe they don't like the cold." Beside him, a young scientist named Elena Ross adjusted her gloves. "They come from a planet with 2 suns," she explained. "Their biology probably never experienced real cold. They might think our polar regions are useless wastelands." James gave a half-smile. "Then maybe that's where we make our stand." While most of the world panicked, Outpost 19 began to prepare. Old diesel generators roared to life. They had no nuclear weapons, no lasers, just old rifles, snowmobiles, and the cold. But they had something else too: human stubbornness. 3 nights later, the aliens sent smaller drones, metallic creatures shaped like spiders. They scanned the land, testing, learning. One drone found Outpost 19. It hovered over the snow, glowing blue. James raised his rifle and fired once. The bullet hit the drone's side, leaving only a small dent, but then the metal started to freeze. The extreme cold was eating it alive. Elena's eyes widened. "Wait, it's freezing faster than expected," she said. "Their metal can't handle sub-zero temperatures. It's reacting with the atmosphere." The drone fell, silent and dead. James stared at it, then looked up at the sky where dozens more lights blinked. "They think we're weak," he said. "Let's show them what winter means." The team moved fast. They set traps using liquid nitrogen, old snow machines, and chemical coolants. The temperature outside dropped to -50. The aliens, built for warm worlds, didn't understand what they were walking into. Their machines began to slow down, their energy fields flickered. Soon, an entire squad of alien drones landed near the outpost, scanning for heat signatures. But they didn't find any. Humans were hiding underground. Then the snow above them cracked open, and James and his soldiers emerged in white suits, almost invisible against the blizzard. They moved like ghosts. The first drone turned its scanner toward them, but before it could react, a cold explosive went off, sending shards of ice through its core. The rest tried to retreat, but their wings froze mid-flight. Within seconds, the mighty machines fell from the sky like broken toys. For the first time, the aliens saw something they couldn't understand, something not written in any data file or military record: the quiet, merciless power of Earth's winter. As the blizzard grew stronger, James stood outside, the snow biting at his face. Above him, the alien ship hovered, unsure whether to advance or retreat. "You wanted to test humanity," he said softly, almost to himself. "Now, it's our turn." And from that frozen wasteland, the message of resistance began to spread. Across radios, across broken cities, humans whispered one word that gave them hope again: winter. They didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. Snow kept falling endlessly over Outpost 19. The world outside was white, silent, and deadly. The temperature had dropped below -60 degrees, and even the diesel engines groaned like dying beasts. Inside the underground bunker, the humans worked by dim yellow lights, breath visible in the cold air. Captain James Walker stood before the radio console, staring at the small green signal light. "We're still online," he said, voice calm but heavy. "That means someone out there might still hear us." Elena Ross adjusted the frequency. "Maybe," she said. "But we've heard nothing back. Every other signal is gone. The aliens must have shut down most transmissions." James exhaled slowly. "Then we'll be their noise in the dark." Up above, the alien ship hovered miles above the Arctic clouds. Its smooth black surface reflected no light. Inside, alien commanders of the Xylar Dominion studied data streams of their lost drones. Their logic processors could not explain it. Machines that had survived plasma storms and vacuum radiation had been destroyed by cold. "Primitive planet," one alien said, his voice like metal scraping. "Yet it holds danger unseen." "Their environment resists us," another replied. "Their world itself is a weapon." They decided to send ground troops, biological units designed to adapt to any terrain. But they had never faced temperatures like this. Back at Outpost 19, Elena watched the radar screen flicker. "Multiple heat signatures. Coming from the South Ridge," she said. James loaded his rifle. "Then they've found us again." The soldiers geared up quickly, white parkas, thermal visors, snow boots wrapped in fur. Each step they took outside crunched loudly in the frozen air. Visibility was low. Only the sound of the wind howling across the tundra filled the silence. Then the sky cracked with green light. Alien drop pods sliced through the clouds like meteors, slamming into the snow one after another. From inside each pod, tall, thin creatures emerged, covered in dark armor that shimmered under the aurora. Their breath steamed in the cold. At first, they moved fast. But as the minutes passed, their movements slowed. The cold was crawling into their armor, freezing their joints. One alien reached out its clawed hand, and the metal coating it snapped apart like glass. James whispered into his radio. "Now." Hidden charges buried in the snow exploded, not with fire, but with bursts of frozen gas. The temperature dropped even lower. The aliens screamed, their bodies cracking. Elena watched through binoculars from the bunker entrance. "They can't handle it," she said. "They thought humans were weak because of biology, but they never learned to fight a world like ours." James and his team moved across the snow like shadows, finishing what the cold had started. Their weapons were simple: bullets, blades, ice traps, but against freezing metal, it was enough. Hours later, when the storm cleared, the field was silent again. Dozens of alien pods lay open, lifeless. The soldiers stood around them in silence, their faces pale but proud. Elena crouched near one of the frozen corpses. "They're organic under the armor," she murmured. "But their blood, it's like liquid crystal. It freezes instantly." James looked at the horizon, where the alien mothership still glowed faintly. "They'll learn from this," he said. "Next time, they'll adapt. And when they do, we'll need something more." Back inside the bunker, the generator coughed and died. Lights flickered out. For a moment, they were left in complete darkness. Only the sound of wind outside reminded them they were still on Earth. Elena turned on a small lantern. "Fuel's almost gone," she said softly. "We can't survive another week without supplies." James nodded. "Then we move. There's an old research station 30 kilometers east. If we can reach it, maybe we'll find something useful there." The next morning, the team packed what little they had: frozen rations, flares, and a few canisters of chemical coolant. They left Outpost 19 behind, their footprints quickly buried under new snow. But high above, unseen, the alien ship began to change. Its black armor shifted colors, adapting. The Xylar were learning. They started building new drones, ones designed to resist the cold, to mimic Earth's own resilience. Inside their ship, the alien commander watched satellite images of the human group moving across the tundra. "They adapt," he said. "So do we. Let this winter test decide who survives." Far below, James and his soldiers moved like ants across the white wasteland, unaware that they were being hunted again. The wind grew stronger, and the world around them felt heavier, older, and alive, as if the planet itself was watching the battle unfold. Elena glanced up at the swirling sky. "Do you ever wonder," she asked quietly, "if Earth wants us to win?" James didn't answer. He just tightened his scarf and kept walking toward the horizon where faint red lights blinked through the snow, the old research station. But none of them knew what waited there. The true war was only beginning, and winter was far from over. The storm had quieted, but the silence that followed was worse. Every step James and his team took sank deep into the untouched snow, each crunch echoing in the emptiness. The sky was pale gray, heavy with more snow that refused to fall. The cold felt alive now, biting through clothes, crawling under skin, whispering that they didn't belong here. After 5 hours of walking, Elena spotted something in the distance. "There," she said, pointing. Through the fog, a dark shape rose from the ice, metal, tall, and angular. The Arctic Research Station Theta, forgotten for over a decade. The outer walls were buried halfway in snow. Old antenna towers leaned sideways, frozen solid. James signaled his team to move slowly. No one knew if the place was still stable, or if the aliens had already found it. Inside, everything was dark. The only light came from their flashlights, beams cutting through the cold air. Ice covered the walls like veins of glass. Signs written in faded paint read, "Biological testing. Authorized personnel only." Elena brushed her gloved hand over a frozen terminal. "This place was shut down after the last Ice Age simulation project," she said. "They were studying extreme cold effects on organisms, maybe even weapons." James looked around. "Then maybe they left something behind we can use." They spread out. The hallways were narrow, filled with broken equipment. The deeper they went, the colder it became, even though they were inside. The temperature sensors on their suits started to glitch. "Captain," one soldier said, his breath fogging up his visor, "it's getting colder down here than outside." Elena frowned. "That's impossible. Unless—" She stopped. Her eyes widened. "Unless something is creating the cold." They reached a heavy steel door, sealed with frost. A faint humming sound came from the other side. James gave a nod. 2 soldiers attached a thermal cutter, sparks lighting up the tunnel. When the door finally opened, a wave of icy mist rolled out. Inside was a huge chamber, and at its center stood a massive cylindrical machine, glowing faintly blue. Tubes ran into the walls, frozen solid. Around it, scientists' skeletons still sat at their desks, as if they had frozen mid-task. Elena stepped closer. "Oh my God, this is it. Project Frost Core." James raised an eyebrow. "What the hell is that?" "It's not a weapon," she said. "It's an artificial climate reactor. It was built to mimic and control extreme cold environments. But it was abandoned when it became unstable." She wiped frost off a screen. "They said it could freeze entire regions in minutes." James stared at the glowing core. "If it still works." "It could freeze the alien fleet out of the sky," Elena finished, her voice trembling between fear and awe. The team began working quickly, restoring power. Old systems flickered alive, lights dim and uneven. They could hear the hum grow louder, like the sound of a heartbeat buried in ice. But as they worked, one of the soldiers outside radioed in. "Captain, movement detected. Multiple contacts, 30 meters out. They found us." James grabbed his rifle. "Positions. Hold them off while we finish this." The soldiers took up defensive positions at the main entrance. Through the blizzard, alien shadows appeared, tall, glowing blue under the aurora sky. But these were different. The aliens had adapted. Their new armor steamed with internal heat, resisting the cold. The first plasma bolt tore through the snow, melting a hole in the wall. The humans fired back, bullets cracking through armor joints. For every alien that fell, 2 more advanced. Inside the lab, Elena's hands shook as she tried to power the frost core. "Come on, she whispered. Warning lights blinked red. "Manual override required." James shouted into his radio. "Elena, we're losing ground." She slammed a lever down. The machine roared to life, the hum turning into a deep pulse. "I need 2 more minutes." The aliens pushed forward, their heat melting the snow around them, their armor glowing brighter. A plasma bolt struck near James, knocking him backward. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. He forced himself up, blood trickling down his face. "Fall back to the reactor room." The remaining soldiers retreated, firing as they moved. One stayed behind to cover them, a quiet man named Mason. He smiled once, then detonated a charge that brought half the corridor down, sealing himself and several aliens under tons of ice. Elena screamed, "It's ready." James stumbled to the control panel. "Then do it." She hit the activation switch. For a second, nothing happened. Then the air around them cracked. Frost spread across the walls like living veins, racing outward. The temperature plunged. The ground shook. Outside, the sky turned white as a storm exploded outward from the station, freezing everything in its path. Alien troops froze mid-step, their armor turning brittle, their heat shields collapsing. One by one, they shattered into pieces under the storm's fury. Inside, James and Elena crouched beside the console, watching the chaos through a cracked window. "You did it," he said softly. Elena's voice trembled. "We might have done too much. The reactor's unstable. It won't stop." James turned toward her. "How long before it blows?" "Minutes," she whispered. "Maybe less." The floor trembled again. The frost core pulsed like a living heart, the light inside growing brighter, whiter. James looked at his remaining team. "We evacuate now. Move." They ran through collapsing tunnels as the storm grew louder. The wind screamed like a beast. Behind them, the reactor chamber erupted in light. When they finally burst out into the open snow, a blinding white wave swept across the horizon. For miles, everything froze in perfect silence. The sky, the snow, the alien wreckage, all locked in a moment of eternal ice. The blast threw them to the ground. When James looked up, the research station was gone, buried under a frozen mountain. Elena lay beside him, breathing heavily. "It worked," she said weakly. "The aliens' ground units, all gone." James looked to the sky. The mothership still hovered, but its black surface was now covered with a layer of ice. Cracks began to form across it like spider webs. He exhaled, the cold mist curling in the air. Then maybe we just showed them what humanity's weakness really means. Above them, the ship began to fall. And somewhere deep within the frozen storm, something ancient stirred, something that had been asleep long before humans, long before the Xyler. Winter had awoken something else. When the frost core detonated, the Arctic world turned silent. The storm that followed was not natural. It was alive, endless, and ancient. 4 hours, the blizzard raged like a living creature, tearing through everything that moved. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Captain James Walker opened his eyes slowly. Snow had buried half his body. His radio crackled weakly in the cold. "Elena, report," he said, his voice rough and slow. A few meters away, Elena pushed herself up, shaking snow off her helmet. "I'm here. I think we survived." The others stirred around them. Only 4 of the original 12 soldiers were still breathing. The rest lay motionless, frozen where they'd fallen. The blast had frozen the aliens too. Their black armor stood upright like statues scattered across the tundra. The world was quiet again. But it wasn't peace, it was the kind of quiet that hides danger beneath it. James stood, brushing frost from his rifle. The frost core sight was gone, buried under a mountain of solid ice. Steam still rose from the cracks where the reactor once stood. Elena looked up at the sky. The alien mothership hung there, half frozen and tilted. It wasn't falling anymore, just hovering, silent. "They're not dead," she said. "They're repairing. I can feel it." James narrowed his eyes. "Then we finish this before they do." But as they prepared to move, a deep rumbling sound came from beneath the ice, slow, powerful, and old. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Elena froze. That wasn't the ship. The ice cracked. Blue light pulsed through the fissures, spreading outward in lines that stretched across the tundra like veins. The snow began to glow from underneath. "What the hell is that?" one of the soldiers shouted. Elena stared at the light in horror. "It's not alien tech," she whispered. "It's something else, something that was already here." Before anyone could react, the ice exploded upward. A massive shape rose from the ground, taller than any building, glowing blue-white, shaped like a creature made of frozen glass. Its eyes burned with ancient fire. It wasn't Xyler. It wasn't human. It was something older, something that the frost core had awakened. The soldiers opened fire instinctively. Bullets shattered against the creature's surface but did nothing. The thing moved slowly, each step sending shockwaves through the ice. Elena shouted over the wind. "Stop shooting! It's reacting to heat. Your weapons make it stronger." The alien mothership above them suddenly came alive again, scanners flashing as it detected the new energy surge. From its underside, massive cannons began to glow. The Xyler were going to attack it. James looked between the ship and the monster. Good. Let them fight each other. The sky lit up as the mothership fired beams of plasma into the creature. The ice shattered, and for a moment, it looked like the monster would fall. But instead, it absorbed the energy, growing brighter. Then it turned its gaze upward and screamed, a sound that shook the air itself. The blast of frozen energy that followed hit the mothership like a hammer. In seconds, the alien ship began to freeze from the inside out. Its engines dimmed, its armor cracked. James and Elena could only watch as the sky burned blue. The Xyler ship fell in slow motion, crashing miles away with a sound like the earth splitting open. When the shockwave reached them, James grabbed Elena and dove behind an ice ridge. Snow and debris rained down for minutes. Then, silence again. Elena pushed herself up, coughing. "They're gone," she said. "Both the aliens and that thing?" James looked toward the horizon. The creature was still standing, motionless now, frozen mid-roar. It looked like a mountain made of ice and light. "No," he said softly. "It's not gone. It's waiting." They set up camp inside an old wrecked hangar nearby. The few survivors gathered around a small fire made from burning old gear. Elena stared into the flames. If that thing's been under the ice for centuries, then it's part of this planet. Maybe it's the reason Earth is so cold in the first place. Maybe that's why the frost core reacted like it did. It woke something ancient. James nodded slowly. "And now it's awake." That night, while the others slept, James climbed a nearby ridge to look out over the endless ice. The stars were bright, clearer than ever. And far away, he saw faint blue lights moving under the frozen surface, like veins of energy spreading across the land. Elena joined him quietly. "You see it too?" He nodded. "It's spreading. Whatever that thing is, it's changing the planet." "Maybe it's defending it," she said softly. "Maybe the planet woke it up to fight the aliens." James gave a cold half-smile. "Then we just became part of something much bigger than a war." In the distance, a low hum echoed across the tundra. Deep, rhythmic, like the sound of a heartbeat beneath the ice. Elena shivered. "James, that's not the creature." He turned to her. "Then what is it?" She looked toward the horizon where the alien wreckage still smoked faintly. "The Xyler ship still has power. Something's moving inside it." For a long moment, they just stood there, the frozen wind whistling past. Above them, the northern lights danced wildly, painting the sky in green and white fire. Finally, James whispered, "Round 2, then." But deep under the ice, the creature's eyes began to glow again. Winter wasn't done testing them yet. The wreck of the alien mothership still smoked under a sky painted with green auroras. From miles away, it looked like a frozen mountain of black metal. But deep inside, something was still alive. Captain James Walker led his remaining team across the snow toward the crash site. The wind had died, leaving the world eerily quiet. Only the crunch of boots on ice broke the silence. Elena walked beside him, her breath visible in the freezing air. "We shouldn't be this close," she whispered. "That ship still has active power cores. If they breach—" James interrupted softly, "If there's a chance someone survived, we need to know. And if they didn't, maybe we find something that helps us stop that thing." He nodded toward the horizon where the giant frozen creature still stood like a god of ice, unmoving but glowing faintly from within. The team reached the crash site by dusk. Twisted metal lay scattered across kilometers of frozen wasteland. Massive alien symbols glowed faintly on cracked hull plates. The air buzzed with static energy. One of the soldiers, Diaz, pointed to a jagged opening in the hull. "Entry point, sir." James nodded. "Lights on. Stay close." They climbed into the ship. Inside, it was dark and wet, ice hanging from ceilings, flickering lights buried in steam. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. As they moved deeper, Elena's scanner beeped. "Multiple life signs," she said. "Faint, but definitely alive." The group rounded a corner and froze. In the middle of a wide chamber, 3 Xylar soldiers were kneeling near a broken console. Their armor was cracked, their energy cores flickering weakly. But when they saw the humans, they didn't attack. One of them raised a hand slowly, palm open. "Do not fire," a metallic voice said through a translator unit. "We surrender." The humans aimed their rifles but didn't shoot. James stepped forward cautiously. "You can understand us?" The alien nodded. Its tall, slender frame shivered slightly in the cold. "Yes. We adapt." Elena's eyes widened. "You're not here to fight?" The alien's voice crackled. "Fight? No. We lost. The cold broke us. But now, something else rises beneath this world. It does not belong to us. Or to you." James exchanged a look with Elena. "You mean that thing we woke up?" The alien tilted its head. "We knew of it. Long ago, our ancestors found traces in your planet's poles. A being that feeds on heat and life itself. You have awakened it." The words hung in the cold air like knives. James took a slow breath. "Then we both have a problem." For a long moment, the humans and aliens just stared at each other. The conquerors and the conquered, now trapped together in a world turning against them both. Finally, James said, "If you really want to survive, help us stop it." The alien hesitated, then extended its clawed hand. "Alliance, temporary." James gripped it firmly. Temporary works. They spent hours inside the wrecked ship, trading information. The aliens shared data about the creature, calling it the Sleeper of Frost, an ancient life form buried deep beneath Earth's crust, dormant for millennia. It had absorbed energy from the frost core explosion, awakening from its slumber. If left unchecked, it would continue to feed, on warmth, on radiation, on life, until the planet became a dead sphere of ice. Elena stared at the data display, her face pale. "It's growing. The energy lines we saw under the ice, it's spreading through the planet's mantle. It's turning Earth itself into its host." James clenched his fists. "So it's not just about survival now. It's about stopping it before the planet becomes one big frozen tomb." The Xylar commander, whose name roughly translated to Kareth, stepped closer. "We have one chance. The Sleeper's core lies beneath the ice ridge, 200 kilometers east. It feeds from geothermal vents. If we destroy the vents, it starves." Elena frowned. Destroying them would cause massive quakes. Maybe even break the polar crust. Karetha's dark eyes glowed faintly. Then your world lives broken, or dies whole. There was no time to argue. The humans and Xyler began working together, salvaging alien power cells and human explosives. They built makeshift sleds and loaded them with supplies. It was an uneasy alliance, two species that had tried to wipe each other out now sharing rations in the cold. That night, around a dim campfire outside the wreck, James watched Kareth staring silently at the stars. "You ever seen snow before?" James asked. Karetha's voice was quiet, almost human. "No. Your planet's cold is strange. It kills slowly, yet beautifully." James chuckled softly. "That's winter for you. Looks peaceful, until it decides you've had enough." Kareth turned his gaze back to the sky. "Perhaps that is why your kind endures. You were born in struggle." In the distance, the frozen creature let out a low, echoing rumble, like a mountain exhaling. The sound shook the air. Elena ran out from the shipwreckage, holding her scanner. "It's moving again," she said. "The sleeper's energy pulse is growing. It's feeding off the planet's core now." James grabbed his gear. "Then we move now. We hit it before it's unstoppable." The team, human and Xyler together, set off across the endless snow. Drones flew overhead, half alien, half human tech. The ground beneath them trembled every few minutes. The planet was changing. As they neared the ridge, the air grew colder, unnaturally so. Their visors began to frost from the inside. The light in the sky dimmed, replaced by faint blue lines pulsing through the clouds. Elena whispered, "It's like the whole world is breathing." James didn't answer. He just kept walking toward the growing light on the horizon. Somewhere ahead, beneath the deepest layers of ice, the sleeper of frost waited, awake, aware, and hungry. The horizon glowed faint blue, alive, shifting, pulsing like veins under translucent skin. The temperature had dropped to levels no instrument could read. The air itself crackled with static, and the world had fallen into a silence so deep that every breath felt like a trespass. Captain James Walker led the convoy through a canyon of ice, the sound of crunching snow echoing between frozen walls. The humans rode snowmobiles retrofitted with alien power cells, their lights dimmed to avoid detection. The Xyler troops moved silently beside them, tall, graceful, almost ghost-like in the cold mist. Elena rode at the front with her scanner humming in her hands. "We're close," she said through the radio. "The readings are off the charts. The sleeper's core should be less than 2 kilometers below us." Kareth, the Xyler commander, walked beside her. "Its energy output has tripled in the last hour. If it continues, your planet's crust will not hold." James glanced at him. "Then we end it before that happens." The plan was simple, at least on paper. The Xyler had salvaged a singularity charge from their ship, a weapon designed to collapse a small section of space into itself. If detonated inside the sleeper's core, it would consume everything in a massive implosion. But there was a catch. The charge had to be armed manually, from within the creature's chamber. No remote detonation. No escape once triggered. As they neared the fissure leading down, the ground shook violently. Ice cracked open, releasing a gust of blue vapor that burned to the touch. A sound followed, a deep, low moan that vibrated in their bones. Elena whispered, "It's awake." They moved fast. Ropes were anchored into the ice as the team descended into the glowing chasm. The deeper they went, the warmer it became. Frost melted from their suits, replaced by mist and steam. The walls around them pulsed faintly, almost like breathing. James stared at the patterns forming on the ice, swirling, alive. "This isn't just ice," he said quietly. "It's part of the creature." Kareth nodded. "You are walking through its veins." When they reached the bottom, the sight took their breath away. A vast cavern stretched before them, lit by a cold blue heart that floated above a pit of molten frost. The sleeper's true form filled the space, massive, beautiful, terrifying. It was like a dragon carved from crystal and light, its body fused into the glacier. Every few seconds, it moved slightly, shifting the air. Elena could hardly speak. It's feeding on the planet's core heat, draining it. James turned to Kareth. Let's plant the charge. They moved quickly. The singularity weapon was placed near the center of the cavern, its silver casing glowing faintly. As Elena worked to arm it, the sleeper stirred. Its head turned slowly, eyes opening, two blinding circles of pale light. Then came a voice. Not in words, not in sound, but in their minds. You wake what you do not understand. Everyone froze. Even the Xyler soldiers looked terrified. You burn and freeze, consume and destroy. You are not the first. You will not be the last. James clenched his teeth. You're killing our world. You leave us no choice. This world was never yours, the voice rumbled. It remembers before your kind crawled from the oceans. The ice above began to crack, massive shards falling like rain. The sleeper's chest pulsed, releasing waves of energy that threw soldiers backward. Elena! James shouted. Finish it! She fought through the wind, hands trembling as she connected the final cables. It's ready, but the activation core is fried. Someone has to do it manually. Kareth stepped forward. I will. James grabbed his arm. No. You'll never make it out. Kareth looked at him with those dark, calm eyes. Neither will you if you stay. My kind caused this war. Let me end it. Before James could argue, Kareth tore free and sprinted toward the center. The sleeper's gaze followed him, blue fire flickering in its eyes. He reached the device and placed his clawed hand on the control panel. The voice thundered again. Foolish child of stars. You would destroy what cannot die? Kareth looked up, defiant. Then I will try. He slammed his hand down. The charge activated. A sphere of black light began to grow, folding the air around it. Elena, now! James shouted. She pulled him back toward the ropes. The ground split apart, the light expanding, consuming everything. The sleeper roared, a sound so loud it felt like the sky itself cracked. As they climbed, the world below them turned inside out. The light swallowed the cavern, the creature, and finally, the mountain itself. When James finally crawled out of the fissure, the horizon was burning white. A blinding flash spread across the sky, then, silence. For a moment, there was no sound, no movement. Just snowflakes falling softly over the wasteland. Elena lay beside him, coughing. Did it work? James looked toward the horizon. The fissure was gone, sealed under miles of fresh ice. The glowing veins that had spread across the land had vanished. He nodded slowly. Yeah, it worked. But as the wind picked up again, a faint pulse of blue light flickered under the ice, just once, then faded. Elena saw it too. James, tell me that was nothing. He didn't answer. He just stared at the endless white, the silence pressing down around them. After a long pause, he whispered, Winter doesn't die that easily. Behind them, the sky shimmered faintly, something moving high above the clouds. Maybe it was debris. Maybe it wasn't. The war wasn't over. It had only changed shape. The world was silent for 3 days. No radio signals, no movement in the skies, no life detected across the polar region. The explosion had wiped out everything within hundreds of kilometers. The sleeper was gone, or so they believed. Captain James Walker sat in the command tent of Outpost Aurora, staring at the frost-covered window. Beyond it, an endless white horizon stretched under a pale sun that refused to rise higher. The storm had not stopped since the detonation. The snow fell like ash, and the air was heavy with static. Elena entered quietly, holding a datapad close to her chest. Her face was pale, her voice tired. We finished scanning the impact zone, she said softly. The core's energy signature has vanished. Karetha's sacrifice worked. James nodded slowly. Then why do you sound like that's bad news? She hesitated, glancing at the monitor on her pad. Because something's still down there. Not energy, not radiation, movement. Rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The words hung in the air. James leaned back in his chair, exhaling. A heartbeat. After all that. Outside, a loud crack echoed across the plain. Soldiers froze, eyes turning toward the east where the glacier wall met the sky. A plume of ice erupted upward, scattering shards into the wind. For a moment, the storm itself seemed to twist in that direction, as if drawn toward something unseen. James grabbed his coat. Gear up. We're going out. The snowmobiles roared through the storm, lights cutting through the haze. The wind was brutal, tearing at their visors. The coordinates led them to a vast crater, a wound in the ice that went down forever. Blue mist rose from below, faintly glowing. Elena peered down. It's too deep. No heat signatures, but, listen. James tilted his head. Beneath the howling wind came a low, steady pulse. Not mechanical. Not alive. Something in between. The sleeper's body was destroyed, Elena murmured. But what if it wasn't a creature? What if it was something older? James frowned. Older than what? She looked up at him, eyes wide. Older than life. Hours later, inside the command tent again, the data was spreading across every screen. Energy readings forming fractal patterns, repeating infinitely, like snowflakes coded into the very fabric of the storm. It's spreading, Elena whispered. The energy that powered the sleeper, it's not gone. It's using the storm as a carrier. The whole atmosphere is becoming part of it. James stared at the flickering maps. Then Kareth didn't destroy it, he woke it up. At that moment, the calm crackled. A voice came through, broken, distant. This is Orbit Station Vega. Do you read me? Elena ran to the console. Vega, this is Aurora Outpost. We read you. What's happening up there? Static for a moment, then the reply came, urgent, panicked. There's something coming from the polar region. The clouds, they're rising into orbit. It's like the planet is breathing. James froze. Breathing. The voice came again, almost shouting now. The temperature's dropping fast. Space itself around Earth is frosting over. You have to. Then silence. The signal died. The lights in the outpost flickered, dimmed, and went out. Only the pale blue glow from outside remained. Elena whispered, James, it's here. The snow outside had stopped. The air was still, unnaturally so. The sky shimmered with faint auroras that twisted in shapes that looked almost alive. A column of light rose from the crater far away, slow, deliberate, as if something beneath the ice was pushing through. James gripped his rifle. Not that it would help. What is it? Elena's voice shook. It's not a being. It's a system. A defense mechanism built into the planet. Maybe to reset itself when corrupted. That's what the sleeper was, a failsafe. The light brightened, spreading across the clouds, turning night into a frozen dawn. Then, slowly, the wind began again, gentle at first, then growing stronger, colder, sharper. Elena looked at him. It's cleansing the surface. Rebooting Earth. James stood still as snow began to swirl around them. His breath crystallized in the air. We triggered extinction. Hours passed, maybe days. It was impossible to tell. The outpost buried itself under the snow, and the world outside became silent again. Inside, the last generator flickered weakly. James sat by the fading light, his body wrapped in layers of frost-bitten fabric. Elena slept beside him, her breathing slow, steady. He looked at the window one last time. The storm had ended. The sky was clear. The stars shone bright, but strange, closer, sharper, reflecting off a planet now locked under miles of ice. He smiled faintly, whispering to no one. They mocked our weakness, but they never understood what winter really is. Thousands of years later, a new expedition from a distant world landed on the frozen Earth. The explorers walked over endless white plains, scanning the silence. Beneath the ice, their sensors picked up faint echoes, heartbeat-like patterns frozen in time. One of them knelt, brushing frost from the ground. "Strange," he said. "This planet died, but something still moves below." Another looked up at the shimmering aurora overhead. "Perhaps it sleeps." They turned to leave, their ships glowing against the horizon. Far below, under the ancient ice, something pulsed once, slow, steady, eternal. Winter watched. And waited.